talk is about supporting user control and visualization, very well aligned with what Ted was saying, and supporting the physician, not taking over or replacing the physician. And so those are the notions that we're gonna pass through. I think Bradley Ray's given some of my background already, and I'm always happy to wave the flag of the Human Computer Interaction Lab at University of Maryland, a wonderful interdisciplinary research community. Now on its 9th director, Jessica Vitak is taking over this summer. You can look at our website and see the 1,000 papers and 200 videos and 200 projects over the years. And we're delighted to have been such a rich and vibrant community that stimulated so much interesting and important work. I hope some of you know me from my book, Designing the User Interface, which now in its 6th edition requires 5 co-authors to tell the story of this remarkable moderate-sized community, which has spawned so much innovation and been so influential. The book tells the story of the key theory of direct manipulation, of visual representation of the world of objects and actions, and being able to point, click, drag, and squeeze and pinch, etc. And the ways that we build those systems through menus and speech and search, social media and information visualization are important and newer contributions. As the Bradley mentioned in introductions, the few things I've done, small things, which turned out to be a high impact. And so the idea of web links in the early 80s, we were working on electronic encyclopedias on personal computers, and the idea of having words embedded in paragraphs that were highlighted. You can see the light blue highlights here. Those were the ones we chose after studying many different designs. There are about a dozen empirical studies about the design of hypertext systems and the design of links. When we had red links, they were brighter and more visible, but then users just did not read through the text carefully and didn't remember and take the message away of the text. So the light blue was a great compromise. And Tim Berners-Lee took that up. We were colleagues with him and met him. He saw our work, and that's what he cited in his Spring '89 manifesto for the web. So it's sometimes amazing how small ideas like the link travel really well. The touchscreen keyboards also were our work in the later 80s when we began to work on touchscreens. Keyboards at that time required 1-inch square buttons to be able to touch, and we developed a 9-inch wide keyboard, and then a 7 and a 5 and a 3-inch keyboard with small buttons that you could put your finger on, slide around, and then activate on lift off. And that strategy proved to be very, very effective. But it was so surprising that reviewers of one of the papers did not believe we could do this. And so we had to produce this video where this screenshot is grabbed from. It's the record we have of what it looked like. And so that became an important part of devices, especially when Steve Jobs visited our lab in October 1988, and we showed all these different designs, especially touchscreen designs. And I became a consultant for Apple for 5 years, so I know how some of those things travel. I also hold the patent for photo tagging, where you could drag and drop names on the screen. By now, that idea has evolved quite effectively through visual face recognition that's done quite reliably, but that patent has become influential, and many others cite and follow the patent. So again, these are interesting small design ideas that become very powerful. And when you come as a researcher to understand what it is that makes for the success, as Ted Shortlift points out, the extensive usability testing, where you work with real users under real circumstances. And we built these systems, these touchscreen kiosks with links in them for museums like the Smithsonian, for exhibits. And 75,000 people used the system. We logged what they did, and we interviewed them, we talked with them, and we came to understand what works and what doesn't work. But most of my work has been on visualization of more complex systems for more sophisticated users. So Spotfire was a tool we developed in the early 90s, and it had these issues like the dynamic query sliders, double box sliders, and multiple coordinated windows. And when you move one of the sliders, all the boxes update within a few hundred milliseconds and allow the kind of rapid exploration. Spotfire grew into a successful commercial tool. The company was started in 1997. It's a great story of how an academic paper from 1994, work in 91 and 93, emerges in a paper by 94, and the company forms in 97. And these are some of the examples from that tool. It grows to 200 people, and in 2007 gets bought by TIBCO and remains one of the leading tools for pharmaceutical drug discovery and many, many other applications. Colleagues at Stanford developed Tableau, which becomes most widely used tool, and made news 2 years ago by being purchased by Salesforce for $15 billion. So that's kind of amazing. And Tableau is an important and is the most popular tool as of today. But Spotfire remains a distinctive, highly valued, and important commercial product as well. The tree maps were another idea. This shows an example from a commercial design called FinViz for financial visualization. And it shows the 11 sectors of the stock market and each of the 500 stocks in the S&P 500 are shown with the area that is equivalent to their market capitalization, and the color indicating green means they've been rising and red means they've been falling. And so this enables you to see the strong areas, the weak areas, what's moving up, what's moving down. There's another example I took just over the week, I think it was Friday, that shows 1 month performance. So you can see, you can set 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and you can see many other variables. And with this kind of telescope on the data, you can see clearly the strength of the technology sector is the biggest one. It's in the upper left-hand corner, and Apple is the biggest, with Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Tesla having grown dramatically. But you can also see sectors that over the past month were struggling. The diversified banks were in the red sector, and many of the capital markets and banks. The energy sector was in the red. And so the pattern gets pretty complicated and pretty interesting. The dramatic days when everything's green except for a few red rectangles, or when everything's red with just a few green rectangles, are pretty revealing. The information leaps out to you and becomes very apparent that the visual representation makes it really guides the understanding of the use and gives you answers to questions that you didn't know you had. That's the power of visualization. I've worked with a small company called VisualAction, which calls its version Flare Maps, and they have lots of demos on their website. And you can take a look at visualaction.com and see how to put together a variety of data analysis tools using tree map strategies. Later on, we worked on Node Excel, network analysis and visualization embedded in Excel. And I should say that the tree maps also kind of the way a tool becomes a successful story, an academic tool. We, through the University of Maryland, licensed tree map software to 17 companies. But that was still a small audience. But in 2013, Microsoft added tree maps to Excel. And so it became very widely used, and tree maps are found in most visualization tools, Tableau and Spotfire and all the rest. Node Excel was our contribution, also embedded in Excel to allow simplified analysis of network analysis. And on the right-hand bottom is the event flow tool that we started using for medical event sequences. This example, maybe for this community, I should spend a few minutes on, shows a project we did with Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. And they were studying the pediatric emergency room admissions. And this data on 215 cases was brought to us for analysis. And I particularly like this one because they thought the teams were doing the right thing in most of the cases. And the right thing would have been a red stripe, an orange stripe, a green one, a blue one, followed by the gray area. So that's airway, breathing, circulation, and disability. That's the ABCD of those lines. That's the sequence they're supposed to be done in. They're supposed to be done within 2 minutes. And then you get 7 minutes for taking the baby's clothes off and doing a full body examination. So only about half these infants received the right sequence of treatments. And what was particularly revealing to the managers of the pediatric emergency room were the 29 different ways in which the staff was not doing the right thing. Now, not all of these were serious failures, but it did reveal to the managers what they didn't know, which was that things were not as orderly as they should have been. So this led to retraining of the staff and better data collection, and updated use. This tool has been used by many since then. Maybe the best story is Caitlin Beer at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, who studied Giardia and found the patterns of 6,000 patients across the US, North America, in their treatment of Giardia. And she too found that less than half the patients were getting the right sequence of treatment. So it's a powerful and revealing tool that you might want to take a look into. So that's where I've come from. But let me summarize a few of the points. That the goal of visualization is insight, not pictures. That's kind of an important message, and one that I've repeated throughout my work, is that you're not after beautiful pictures. There is a world of data art, which is just fine, but you're after an understanding and insight, which will allow changes in decisions and in action. Some of you may know what I called playfully the visual information visualization mantra, and I wrote it this way: overview first, zoom and filter, then details on demand. And in the paper in 1996, I repeated it a dozen times, I think, but the message was to remind myself, our team, and others that a good design strategy was overview first. Show all the data, whether it's 1 million or 1 billion items, show a representation that lets you see the whole picture, allow people to see the patterns and the gaps and the clusters, and then allow the users to zoom in on what they want, filter out what they don't want, and then click for details on demand. And this paper in a second level conference has amazingly drawn almost 7,000 citations on Google Scholar, which is a startling number. And what I think people appreciated was it asserted the primacy of human control, that it is the human who gets the overview first, then zooms in on what they want. They choose what to filter, and then they choose what details on demand they want to get. So that's the message there. And I just couldn't resist bringing up this great example from the New York Times that shows this idea of how an overview visualization is so powerfully revealing, and that details also provide insight. So this was a scattergram of the temperature in Portland, Oregon, and in Vancouver, where I've been during the past year. But the 3 hot days of extreme weather were so out of range for Portland, way over 100, outside the range of anything they've ever had before, even though they have had 100-degree days in the past. But the 3 red days at the top just leap out to show you how extreme it was. In Vancouver, where we were, it was hot, but not as hot. Vancouver generally is in the 70s. It does get up into the 80s, occasionally in the 90s, but those 3 days of 2 weeks ago were really strong outliers there. But I think the Portland case was even more extreme. And so it's a great example of how a visualization gives you answers to questions you didn't know about. Visualization has just become a huge issue during the COVID crisis, when the phrase flattening the curve became the dominant guide for what was necessary to do. And these idea of visual representations and the many dashboards that every city, county, state, and province set up were really key destinations. The Johns Hopkins University coronavirus dashboard was a notable one, which had a great deal of visual presentations, as well as a data resource for others to build on. So that's where I've come from, but here's where we're going. This talk is about human-centered AI and putting the lessons of visualization together to make a combination with the potent tools that Ted Shortlift described of deep learning and machine learning that have become widely used in every discipline, including medical care. So the goal that I see is to amplify, augment, empower, and enhance people. The traditional history of AI was to measure performance, but performance of algorithms. And the new goal is to measure the performance of the users and the people who use them. So that's the way we're going to do it. And the notion of design is to build self-efficacy, creativity, to enable the physicians to be creative, the physicians to be more self-efficacious, the patients to be, and to clarify the responsibility. It's not a computer that's doing the surgery or making a decision. It's a person. And to support social connections among users. And those four ideas lead us to a set of design goals and design guidelines, which will be very powerful. My other message is people are not computers and computers are not people. For me, there's just a completely different category. They're not the same. And the suggestion that computers are going to become social and members of our family, our teachers, our child carers is a misguided and unfortunate one, which will, I think, will fade out. There'll still be those who believe it and work on it, but the notion of human control and design of technologies that empower, enhance, augment, and amplify becomes a central theme. My way of capturing this is in this bumper sticker, humans in the group, computers in the loop. We do want to support people working in connection with other people, the collaboration, the social connections, the participation. We do want the computers in the loop, and that's the goal of these design principles. What we want also, once we work down to the technical design goals, is a set of HCAI attributes. The ones I focus on are reliable, safe, and trustworthy, but there are about 25 terms that have been widely discussed and promoted, and they're all admirable, positive things to pursue. The challenge we face, though, is that almost all of these are ones that are vague, and we don't have adequate forms to measure them. And so the field has pushed along in a very sort of informal way, and we're now reaching the point where we need the ethical issues, we need discussions of these attributes, but what we need most are the design guidelines, the practical ways to put these ideas to work. So I can offer some of that in this talk, and I'm just going to give a few examples from the book that I've written called Human-Centered AI. It'll be published by Oxford University Press in January of next year. A central issue, which I think is sort of a potent one, and Ted Shortlift talked about these issues. Also, the design metaphors of intelligent agents, social robots, teammates, collaborators, or autonomous systems are one set of views. Those have value. They may push you forward in your thinking, but I'm going to advocate the ones on the right, that the super tools that extend human abilities, the active appliances, the telebots, and the control centers are the dominant, will be the dominant forms. And that's where I'm going. Now, somewhere in between are the combined designs, which will allow the use of both of these sets of metaphors. But I will stick to the right-hand side of super tools, active appliances, telebots, and control centers. And I hope you will too. Keep in mind, there's the dominant discussion and the dominant design principles that are out there focus on intelligent agents, social robots, teammates, and autonomous systems. So stick with it and be aware as you read articles as to which side they fall on. And Ted Shortlift's example of a human plus a tool or a super tool gives us a great power. And that's In the medical world, it's always been the case of a stethoscope, an X-ray machine, an MRI, and electrocardiograms. All are ways to benefit, enrich, and empower the physician, and increasingly the patient. All right, so just the kind of super tool examples that are out there that are widely used is your digital camera, my favorite example of how you can get high levels of automation and high levels of human control, okay? It seems like a puzzle, and the old idea was if you wanted more automation, you had to give up user control, human control. And I say, no, 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 we want human control. We assert the centrality of human control. And so digital cameras allow users to point their camera where they want, zoom to the level they want, and then click to get their decisive moment when they want to. At the same time, the automated system is quickly, rapidly, effectively adjusting the focus and the aperture setting, reducing hand jitter, and all the many things that AI can do. And then the picture emerges, and the user, again, has a rich set of controls that allow them to adjust, to edit, to annotate, to change the contrast, the brilliance, the lightness, the many, many other features, and then to share easily with others. So they've got it right that you're going to embed this in a social connected world. I'd say the similar thing happens for GPS navigation systems. This one where I'm asking for a route from the White House to the University of Maryland College Park, just 8 miles away, just outside the DC border. And so it offers 3 possibilities, and the user gets to choose the one that they want. They're given information about the routes and the amounts of time, and they can choose what they want to do, and then they manage the execution. And that's been the source of the successes of many applications, many applications such as text auto completion, search query completion, spelling corrections, and the example Ted Shortlift showed of the electrocardiogram, which has in the upper right-hand corner in a spatially stable location, the guidance or the choices from the machine, and the user gets to decide whether they accept or reject and how they want to use this information. It's an additional tool. So that's the notion of super tools. And within that, I'm going to offer a new mantra. And this is the idea of visual previews. If you notice, it does on the lower right-hand side of the example, it uses the word previews. And so instead of overview first, a new mantra joins the collection, which is preview first. Preview first. Select and initiate, then show execution. And that notion is very powerful also. So you get a preview for the user. It's the user who, looks at the preview. They select what they want to do. They choose to execute, and then they show and manage the execution. And so that provides a new strategy for thinking about design. This idea was put to work by a wonderful team, Connor Brooks and Daniel Zafir at University of Colorado Boulder, for robots of various kinds, where here this quadcopter, you can see how it's going to move, so you know where it's going to go. And that idea of a preview, which lets you decide or stop or intervene or redirect its goal, is really important. That's the kind of systems we want. Active appliances are sort of future versions of your coffee maker and washing machine and dishwasher. These are the robots that are widely used in people's homes. They're not dexterous or manual. They're not humanoid. They're not mobile, but they are robots in my world of definition because they have sensors. They adjust to current conditions. They use machine learning, but they are increasingly rich and powerful approaches. And I think there's lots of opportunities to improve these and the kitchen appliances and the medical devices that are being used. And I'd rather use the metaphor of active appliances. Similarly, in the medical domains, implanted cardiac pacemakers are shifting from autonomous devices to being ones that are controlled by patients through their iPhones or by physicians and data collected by Medtronic or the companies that manufacture these devices. Another example, again, the metaphor game is on. So I consider the Mars rovers as telebots. Oh yes, some people at NASA will tell you that these are autonomous and they operate on the surface of Mars. Yes, they can avoid obstacles and avoid precipices. They can adjust the position of antenna, solar panels, and they work fine in doing those things. But there's whole control rooms of operators who are managing the overall pattern, dealing with the problems that emerge, and making sure that the robot works. The Vinci Tele-Operated surgery, the journalists love headlines that say robot surgeons do better than your doctor. And the company that makes it says robots don't perform surgery. Your surgeon performs surgery with Da Vinci design using instruments that he or she guides via console. A very powerful telebot in my world. And that's the notion that I think you should adopt. The Bloomberg Terminal is another such example, sort of halfway between a control room and an active appliance or a super tool. Bloomberg daily processes about 1.6 million business articles, filters, organizes them using natural language processing and AI strategies, presents them to users in ways that make the data valuable. Users can customize, they support their own creativity, their beliefs in what data are important for their kind of decision making. They arrange a spatially stable design on the screen with minimal overlap of displays, and this vast amount of information enables them to quickly make important decisions. And it's why more than 300,000 users pay $20,000 a year to have this on their desktop. It's that dramatic a success. And I think the notion of Bloomberg terminals for medical care, Bloomberg terminals for transportation or for other things is gaining momentum. Here's a hospital control center. There are several of these already that will monitor not only the emergency room arrivals, but the 100 different patient-controlled analgesia units or intensive care units that are operating within a large hospital. And having that kind of overview enables decision-making in a much more effective way. So I think those are powerful notions of the future. Control centers for counterterrorism, for transportation, and others, again, allow people to work together. It supports social collaboration, but the vast amount of visual information organized in compact, information-abundant displays makes their work possible. Okay, I'm going to go on to just say that again, explainable AI, the notion that Ted did mention, and I want to build on. It's in the context of actually 15 recommendations about how to build AI. It's in a paper that's openly available on the ACM transactions on interactive and intelligent systems from past year. There are strategies that work at the team level, the organization level, where you want to build a safety culture, the industry level, and then government regulation. So I'll just focus narrowly for today on the team issues, and there are 5 of those. I'll just say briefly that audit trails and analysis tools are important. The idea of incident reporting and forensic analysis is necessary, essentially a flight data recorder for every robot, and then these other strategies, and I will focus just in the remaining minutes on explainable user interfaces. Ted Shortlift showed a very good example of the early days of expert systems and how that model didn't quite work out. Yet, in the great push now for explainable user interfaces, in part motivated by government regulation in Europe, the GDPR regulations require that users have a right to explainability. Now, that regulation did not say how to do it, but it triggered a huge explosion of innovation among researchers about how to do it. Most of that work, more than 90%, is retrospective explanations. That is, the system gives an answer, and then If the user is confused, surprised, it says, here's why. And there are two kinds of explanations: local ones that say why particularly your situation was problematic, or the global explanation of how the machine learning, deep learning tools were working. And I would say, as Ted pointed out, there's very few usability studies of these retrospective explanations. In fact, very few screen designs. I had a great deal of difficulty to find example screens to put in the book that showed what a retrospective explanation would look like. If any of you find one, send it to me. I'm still looking for examples of retrospective explanation user interfaces that not only present information, but allow users to query in depth, to explore, to understand, to record and document it. If they wish to complain about it, they should know. But I think the new goal is just what seems to have worked for not only knowledge-based expert systems, but for intelligent tutoring systems and for user interface explanation systems or online help, was to prevent confusion and surprise. That's the goal. Not retrospective explanations, but prospective user interfaces that present a clear step-by-step decision-making process that the user participates in. This is very much what Amazon checkout looks like. It's very much what TurboTax does. And so that idea seems to have strength. They're interactive, they're visual, and they're exploratory. Let me show you one simple example. A post hoc report about a mortgage request might look like this. Enter amounts to request mortgage. You enter, you want $375,000. Your household monthly income you declare as $7,000, and your liquid assets are $48,000. You click submit, and you get a response with a retrospective post hoc explanation. We're sorry. Or at least they say, we're sorry. Your mortgage loan was not approved. You might be approved if you reduce the mortgage amount requested, increase your household monthly income, or increase your liquid assets. Well, I would give this a, maybe a C rating, a pretty fair one. At least it has an explanation that tells you something about what's going on in this simplified example, but it doesn't tell you how much you have to increase either one of these things. Which one's the really sensitive variable? Does the amount of your assets or your monthly income count more? Where should you put your efforts? And so the alternative that I propose is a prospective user interface that supports exploration, where you get 3 sliders and you can change the amount that you request in your mortgage. And as you do that, on the right-hand side, that vertical bar, the blue bar goes up or down, getting closer or further away from the green line of the score you need to get approval. And you can see in that slider case, the less mortgage money you request, the smaller amount you request, you get more blue. But if you have higher monthly income, you get more blue. And if you have higher liquid assets, you also get more blue. This allows users to explore and see which ones are highly sensitive, where a small change produces a big difference. So I think that provides a very powerful way of trying to understand what's done. Okay. This has been implemented in many examples. A charming one I include in the book is from a group of British librarians. Try it. It's a lot of fun, called whichbook.net. If you want to find a novel to read, this interface lets you move sliders. You choose 4 of the sliders, from funny to serious, beautiful to disgusting, sexual to no sex content to explicit sexual, and optimistic to bleak. And as you move the sliders, the pictures on the right update immediately, so you can see the dramatic effect that they have. It's quite similar to other applications of news recommenders with 3 sliders, simply: politics, sports, and entertainment. If you move the sports up more, you get more sports articles immediately. And that idea that you're directly manipulating the slider produces that immediate result is what's important. Here's another one of a music recommender, choosing 5 of the attributes from sonify, acousticness, instrumentalness, danceability, valence, and energy. And as you move those sliders, you get changes in the recommendations. So those are important strategies. So there we are. We come to the end as just a few takeaways. I want you to remember the idea of the different metaphors, to keep them in your mind. And my encouragement is to favor super tools, active appliances, telebots, and control centers. Secondly, there's a set of 15 recommendations that teams, organizations, industries, and governments can adopt. There's much more detail to describe about each of these. I focused on the explainable UI as one of the 15 recommendations. You can get more on this on these issues from the 3 papers published during 2020, and then 3 shorter summary pieces at the bottom. And the my own website now has the information about this topic, as well as the table of contents for the book, which will appear soon after. If you want to get in touch and keep up on what's happening, 3 months ago we formed a Google group, and on Wednesdays I post a short message which summarizes all the news I've gotten from the members of the group. So it's a quite lightweight one, and just visit the groups.google.com, human-centered-AI. You can follow our Twitter account, Human-Centered AI, or visit the website, which has some resources. If you're ready to help us, we can use a lot more help to build up these resources, but those are good places to begin and keep in touch with the emerging notion of human-centered AI. That is the cover of the book. It shows people working together, supported by technology, and the structure of the book is to focus on the human values of rights, justice, and dignity, with the other issues I mentioned below of self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connections, and then to make reliable, safe, and trustworthy systems. We always remember the stakeholders in these systems and the threats that appear on the right, the malicious actors, the biased data, and the flawed software. So that's where I've been going. I hope you'll join me in this exciting and, I believe, important notion of how to design future systems which will support human control and support the notions of self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connections. That's it. The future is human-centered.